All right, I love a good Friday. Happy Friday, Ed. Welcome to the Unspoken Truth. How you doing, mate?
Yeah, well, happy Saturday to you, and welcome to you to the Unspoken Truth.
You know what? Recording a podcast is a great way to start the weekend. Surprisingly, you wouldn't think that it would. I've got to drag my sorry ass out of bed at 4 o'clock in the morning again. You know, did I feel bad? Do I feel bad about that? No, actually, I got up just like normal. I'm ready to go. And tomorrow morning, I'll wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning as well, like everything else, because that's the routine. I mean, it just is what it is.
Well, I happen to know your secret. So, one of these days,
don't tell anybody.
I promise. I will not tell them about the alien stem cell injections that you get. Just keep that between you and me.
It's the little grey knocking on the window at 3:30 going, oi, using his telepathy into my brain going, it's time to get up and tell the world about aliens, bro. Get up.
That's it. Everybody needs their own alien alarm clock.
There it is. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Unspoken Truth. My name is Robert Bruss. I'm your host. And I'm joined by my fantastically funny co-host, Ed Anderson, over there in Minnesota. We're live here every day at 5:30 a.m. Sydney time and 2:30 p.m. Minnesota time. We like to talk about what's going on in the news and pull back the curtain behind what is actually happening. So you're going to get some pretty interesting information today about a couple of different headlines. We're going to close out our Friday with a little bit of fun and have a bit of a laugh. So make sure you stick with us right to the end of the show. If you haven't already followed us over on Spotify or on your favorite podcasting app, just pop open your phone and search for The Unspoken Truth and you'll be able to get us as a podcast in your ears as well. It's a video in Spotify, and that's one of the benefits of that platform if you're not over there. But we're also available as an audio show in all the other places that podcasts are available. We're over on Twitter. We're also available on Rumble as our backup channel if anything ever happens over here. And we're also on Telegram. Please come on over and join us in the Telegram channel. Just scroll down and the link is right there in the description. I put a whole bunch of unspoken truth in there that I can't put on this self-censoring platform here on YouTube. So I'd love to see you over there and get your comments and feedback on some of the posts that we've got in there. Just remember, folks, that comes with a bit of a warning. There's a bunch of R-rated, war-related content in there. So just be careful what you click on there because you can't unsee those things once you see them for the first time. But I do love you to come over onto Telegram because there's a lot of great stuff that we've got over there that we simply just cannot show here on this platform. So today on the show, we're going to be talking about gold versus the S&P 500. We're going to be talking about those ratios, and Ed, as the finance guru and expert, is going to take us through that. So I'm looking forward to learning something about that. And when you said gold is cheap, yep, I can kind of see all that when you compare that to the S&P 500. Absolutely it is. And I'm looking forward to your take on that.
Don't step on it, man.
Well, I read the title that you put there, and yesterday, I had somebody ask me, hey, do you and Ed know what you're going to talk about when you get started? And I said, no, that's something deliberate that we actually do. And it's something that I really like. I like doing it that way because there's sometimes some surprises. And I think Ed is a little bit more surprised than I am sometimes. And I'm ready for the finance stuff. I'm ready for that. But I'll take Ed in a direction that he's not ready to go sometimes and talk about feelings every now and then. And then we'll talk about aliens or some shit like that. I don't know.
As long as you don't have me putting on yoga pants and doing the downward doggy, whatever it is, then I'm good.
That's where you're drawing the line, huh?
That's where I draw the line.
All right, I got a little report on exactly why Trump has been indicted and what does all of that mean. You might have seen these headlines and whatnot, but I've got a report that gets straight to the heart of it. It takes about 20 seconds to show you that. So stick with me for that. And right towards the end of the show, we're going to have a look at some of the things that have been happening with Joe Biden. I'm going to give you a couple of reminders of what he's been up to and pull the curtain back behind exactly what's going on there. And we're going to have a bit of a laugh to close out the show today. So I'm looking forward to putting this all together for you, and I'm looking forward to closing out the show here on a Friday as well. Ed, have you got any opening remarks before we kick it off? The usual hellos and welcomes.
There you go, exactly. So shout out to my Hey Ed WhatsApp group members and all of my Hey Ed YouTube channel followers. We do stream now on the Hey Ed YouTube channel. So, and please give comments during the show. If you are watching, let us know you're there and let us know where you're dialing in from.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and we'd love to hear your feedback on the stories that we're covering today. Why don't we kick it off and let's have a little bit of a looky-loo at gold and the S&P. Have you got a report for us, Ed?
I do. It goes for about 7 minutes, but it's a fast 7 minutes. I think it'll go pretty fast. Okay.
All right, let's have a look.
Okay, so gold is cheap, and I'm going to prove it to you. Let's get started.
To infinity and beyond.
Okay, so I'm not a financial advisor. Don't construe anything in this presentation as financial advice. Always do your own research before doing anything with your money. And today we're going to be talking about why gold is cheap. Now, for the purposes of this presentation, let's remind ourselves of what the performance of the US dollar has been over the last 110 years. Now, we are all familiar with this little chart, I think. Okay, so this is the performance of the buying power of the US dollar over the past 110 years, since 1913, when the Federal Reserve was created. And you will note that the purchasing power of the US dollar has fallen by 98%. 98%. Well done, Federal Reserve. So let's take a look at the actual performance of the spot price of gold over the past 5 years. Now you can see it's had a really nice run. And right now it's in this little consolidation period here, and it's bumping up against the $2,000 level. So that $2,000 level is a very important technical and psychological level. If gold can stick its head above that $2,000 level and stay there for a certain period of time, it should rock and roll. Now, again, there's no guarantee. You never know. Okay, I'm just looking at the charts. I am a chartist. I'm a technical analysis guy. I believe in the charts because the charts do tell a story. But let's not go down that road. Okay, so if the price of gold is bumping up against $2,000 an ounce, what the hell do I mean by it's cheap? Well, let's take a look at another chart. Now, this chart is going to show you the ratio between the price of gold and the price of the S&P 500. And we're going to take a look at a 100-year chart to take a look at that relationship. Okay, so this is a chart of the ratio between gold and the S&P 500 since 1900. Now, if you look back historically, look what has happened when the price of gold has gotten down to this level. Each time the price of gold got down to these levels, they're followed by a dramatic move upward. And right now, if you look at the far right here, we're right down at this level again. So relatively speaking, when you look at the ratio between gold and the S&P 500, which is a basket of the top 500 companies in the stock market, right? When gold got down to this level, as per this ratio, it is historically proven to be a bottom. So how do you make money? You buy low and sell high, right? Very simple formula. Well, right now, gold, as per this ratio, is low. And in case you're curious, this is the 100-year performance of silver prices. And without going into technical analysis here too much, just trust me, this is a very bullish chart. And it looks like it's setting up for another run. Now listen, I'm not the only one who thinks that gold is a good deal. Central banks bought the most gold on record last year. That's for 2022, right? And this has been the accumulation of gold by the central banks in tons since 1950, from 1950 to 2022. And look at this far right bar. So central banks are buying the most amount of gold over the last 50 years. So why? Why are central banks around the world accumulating gold very aggressively? Could it have something to do with these guys? Russia and China are brewing up a challenge to dollar dominance by creating a new reserve currency. Now, these gentlemen represent what's come to known as the BRICS nation: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. But it's really BRICS plus, right? Because there are many more people signing on to this BRICS agreement. And what they want to do is they want to challenge the dominance of the US dollar. And one of the ways they're doing it is by gathering a lot of commodities, primarily precious metals, primarily gold and silver. And the idea is that they may come up with an alternative currency to the US dollar that is backed by actual commodities, primarily gold. Now, we'll wait and see whether that actually happens, but there's no doubt that there is a de-dollarization program going on in the world. Country after country are starting to transact international trade outside of the US dollar. The US dollar is losing its dominance. And between that de-dollarization program and inflation, the value of our US dollars are going down. And let's remind ourselves of a quote by Vladimir Lenin. The way to crush the bourgeoisie is to grind them between the millstones of taxation and inflation. Our own U.S. government is devaluing our own currency through their insatiable money printing policy. And just in case you are convinced that the U.S. dollar is bulletproof and that it is around forever, let me remind you of something, that fiat currencies, that is currencies created by governments, in our case, in America, it's the US dollar, they have a perfect record. They have a 100% failure rate. Every single one of them has failed. Let's take a quick look at the history of fiat currencies. Okay, so this chart takes us back to 1450, the year 1450. And you can see how these countries have taken their turns being the world reserve currency. It started out with Portugal, then Spain, Netherlands, France, Britain, and now the USA. Now, the longest lasting one there was Spain for 110 years. Now, we're at 94 years. Actually, that was in 1921, so we're at 96 years right now. So, historically speaking, we are coming up on the twilight of our dominance as the world reserve currency. Now, there's, you can't extrapolate, necessarily. That doesn't mean that the US dollar has to lose its dominance, but it is. It is losing its dominance in a steady fashion. Any money you have sitting in the bank is a depreciating asset. It is going down. Do we need to go back to that first chart where I showed you that the U.S. buying power of the U.S. dollar has gone down by 98% since 1913? Now, there is another reason why the wheels are starting to come off the carts of the U.S. dollar and where gold is probably going to shine. This is a chart showing the projection of the federal debt held by the public from 1900 to 2053. This black bar here, this represents where we are right now, right? This is the expected increase in our federal debt, and it is unsustainable. The Western countries, we are debt-based societies, okay? We're built on debt. And over the past few years, we have been loading on debt at incredible levels. And we can kind of get away with it when interest rates were low, but now interest rates are going up. Now, I don't want to ruin your day, but let me give you a little unfun fact. The current yield on U.S. Treasury debt averages around 1.7%. Now, half of that debt matures over the next 3 years. See this chart here, the two orange bars? Over the next 2 years, half of our debt is going to be maturing from that 1.7% average. And they're going to be refinanced because they have to be replaced, right? They're going to be refinanced at somewhere between 3.5% to 5%, which is more than a doubling. Even if interest rates stayed where they are, with the dramatic increase in our national debt, the cost of servicing that debt is going to go up. But when the interest rate on that debt more than doubles, we're going to see an explosion in the carrying cost to the public on that debt. The only solution that the government has, the only one, is to print more money. And as they print more money, inflation is going to continue to go up, which is really bad for the US dollars you have sitting in your pocket or sitting in your bank. But it is really good for gold and silver. That's going to mean more devaluation of our dollars. Inflation is coming. In fact, not just inflation, but I think we're going to see hyperinflation. We're going to see Venezuela type inflation, Argentina type inflation, Turkey type inflation. It's going to get out of control. The best way and the easiest way that I know of to preserve your buying power is gold and silver. So gold and silver is not just for the rich. It's for everyone. We are in very dicey times. You don't want to wait for the value of your dollar to be cut in half or worse before you do anything. Do it now. Reduce your exposure to your bank, get some gold and silver, and establish streams of passive recurring income. Rob and I can help you with all of that. All right, so is gold cheap? Yeah, it's cheap. So I hope I made my case, and that's it for today.
Oh, yeah. You know, one of the favorite things about this show for me, Ed, I don't think you realize, man, like I really like to go deep on a subject, and you always take me deep on that finance subject, and you do that for me at like 5:30 in the morning. I love it, man. You take me all the way there, and it sets me good for the day. So they're really complicated subjects, and I was writing some notes there as I was moving along or listening to you there as well. And I just wanted to ask you a couple of questions. So what you're really doing there, when I watch your reports like that, what I see you're doing is you're taking all of the information that's out there and you're able to analyze that and you understand those things and you break it down to make it really easy to understand, by the way. So thank you for that and kudos for that.
Well, thank you.
But you join the dots with those things, and it kind of, there's a bit of a tragedy here in my family a couple of weeks ago, and I was saying it affected my daughter the most, and I was saying to my daughter, it's never just one thing that causes all of these things. And the way you got to look at this is it's like a plane crash. If you've ever watched air crash investigations, you know, the plane spears in and 300 people die, and it's an absolute tragedy, right? But it takes them sometimes years to piece that back together. And you remember when, you know, in the spirit of the World War III, MH17 was shot down, they picked up all the pieces off the battlefield and they put the plane back together and they showed how the missile hit it and blew it up, right? So, you know, that was just painstaking work. And what you're doing there is doing all the painstaking work for people. And you're joining the dots when you see the value of the dollar is all the way down here, 98% than what it was. The gold price is at historical lows compared to the S&P ratio. Then you've got the brick stuff that you were talking about, and there's a series of other things. And when you line all of those things up, in aviation investigation and disasters, they use a thing called the Swiss cheese model. And so the disaster is at the very end of it. And what they're looking at is a series of things that come in front of the disaster that prevent that from happening. So in aviation, you know, it's pilot training, it's the equipment works properly, it's you know, hundreds of things that happen. And when an accident happens, they say each one of these barriers to stop something from happening is like a piece of Swiss cheese. It's got holes in it, and all of the holes have lined up, and circumstances allowed all of those things to be penetrated, and the crash happens. And what you're doing is you're looking at all of the slices of Swiss cheese. And when you line all of those things up, you can kind of see, I can see almost to the other side, which is what the disaster is. And, you know, that's the ability to be able to forecast, right, and to be able to predict. But you're not trying to predict the future because no one knows the future. What you're doing is you're taking the information that's in front of you and you're making an informed decision about it, and then you're tying it to something else. But I also don't think that what you're doing is like reading the tea leaves either. You're not trying to predict the future by looking at the bottom of your teacup going, oh, well, that's what that means. You're saying, no, this is what this means here. And this is how this affects the next thing and the next thing, like that. I don't think a lot of people do that in their life, Ed. Not many people do. Why would they?
Well, yeah, you know, it's a little tedious, and you do have to be a little obsessive about it to take and the more complicated the topic, the more reflection you have to do. And look, there are people on Wall Street who get paid an awful lot of money to sit and analyze and to come up with these kind of pictures themselves. You know, it's because there are an awful lot of variables. The best we can do is try to come up with the best guesstimate we can based on all the data. But the more data you do inculcate into the formula, the better a picture you're going to have. So you can't just look at one little sliver. You do have to bring in as many different aspects to the macroeconomic view as you can to help formulate the picture. And because, you know, if you're too narrow on the things you consider, then you can miss some really important considerations that could completely change, you know, the outcome of your predictions or assumptions. So, you know, I've been doing this for such a long time that I'm probably better than most at being able to just kind of see the big picture, because I've lived through a lot of this and I spent a lot of time studying this kind of thing. And I listen to people who are smarter than me to help me, you know, come up with conclusions too. And of course, it's not a perfect science. You can't, if it were a perfect science, you wouldn't need analysts. Okay, you wouldn't.
Yeah.
So yeah, you know, one of the lessons that I taught my students when I was a trading instructor is, listen, picking the right stock in any given day is useful, but it's not nearly as important as what your plan is. What's your plan? It's all about your plan. What's your plan? I mean, any idiot can buy a stock, right? The question is, what do you do after that? Okay. Are you going to let it run? Are you going to scalp it? Are you looking for a return? So the plan is everything. And that's what I want people out there to do, is come up with a plan. I think I made a really good case about why the US dollar is obviously going to be going lower. The buying power on our currencies are going to be going down. Gold and silver have a 3,000 to 4,000 year history of maintaining its value. So I think that's a pretty solid, statement to make on predicting its future performance. And we know historically how gold and silver respond in certain kind of market conditions. We just know it. So given all that, we can make some pretty good generalized decisions about how to address the economic conditions out there. And some of them are just obvious. They're just, a lot of times, the economic outlook is cloudy. But then there are times when it's like, it's smacking you in the face like a frying pan, boom, what the hell? We're in one of those what the hell moments in history where it's when you look at what's going on with our money printing, look at that chart. The acceleration in the money printing that we've been doing is so dramatic. It's undeniable. Look at that chart. It's not even the ski slope. It's like a mountain, right? It's going straight up. It's like you can't. This has never happened before in history. For those people out there who would say, yeah, but this is just another business cycle. We've seen this before, Ed. No, you haven't.
No, you haven't.
We have not. Yeah. We have not seen this before.
Yeah, it's without a precedent, completely right, and that's where the opportunity lies as well, and that's the chance to capitalize on something like that. I wanted to share something with you as well that I've been working on outside of all of this Unspoken Truth project that I've been doing with you for the last month or so, and I've been building some AI models with a couple of different people. So we've been playing with ChatGPT, and one of the when you go to ChatGPT and you ask it, hey, what are some of the really good uses that we could use you for? And ChatGPT, one of the top things that it says, it doesn't matter how many times you prompt it with that question or you ask it that question, it gives you some variation of this answer. And it says that one of the things that I'm really good at is to understand sentiment and to understand where people are. And at first I was like, how do you understand sentiment? Because it's a kind of a closed loop system, right? I can't go to the internet and ask what's the sentiment or the trend about something here. But then a couple of months later, there's a thing that's come out, and there's some really smart developers that have created these things called agents. So think of agents like, the agents from the Matrix. So you give your agent a name. So I called my agent Robbo. Hey, Robbo, I want you to go and you give it 3 parameters and you give it 3 things. So this is like the genesis of artificial general intelligence. So what I do is I give it 3 prompts and I 3 definitive outcomes. So essentially going back to the model, the Swiss cheese model, what I could do is I could feed the machine that chart that you had about gold from 100 years ago. I could feed the machine that chart from 1450 about fiat currencies, and I could pull out all of that information because that charting information exists, pull it down as a CSV file and feed it into the machine via API. You can't do it on the front end, you've got to program it with the API. And then I can ask it a series of questions. So based on the parameters that I've given to you here, so you're creating the prompts, right? And the prompts can be like a block of text that's pretty big on the screen. It's as wide as your screen, and it's like that big, it's like 1,000, like a super prompt. And you say, based on that, and that particular piece of Swiss cheese there that's stopping the collapse from happening, you ask it a question. Then you ask it another question about the next piece, the next piece, the next piece, the next piece, and then you ask it all to join together to make something happen. So essentially, one of the projects that I was working on was about how to think strategically. So I came across this guy, and he's got this thing called the art of strategic thinking, and it's really clever. So he's got this model that he uses, and he uses the model as a filter. And the idea of it is, what is it that I can? So I've got a decision to make today. I've got an X or a Y decision, an A or a B, or a 1 or a 0 decision. It's a binary decision. And I'm not really sure which one to make because I can't really foresee the outcomes. So the idea was that you would take his strategic thinking model, and what it would do is you would say the first thing you need to consider is, why are you trying to do that, and what would be the outcome if it was favorable to you? And then there's the outcome, and then you can work backwards from there to say, well, if I made the decision to do this, to raise capital, and I was successful and I was able to raise $1.9 million, what would be the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, 10th order of effects if I could do that? And even though the system is a little bit rigid because you have to program it, you have to give that, once you've given it the parameters, you can program it with an API to automatically do all of these things. And so what you're doing when you're looking at the analysis is you're just doing the manual version of that. So you look at that chart, at that chart, at that chart, and you put it all together. And what we could do is we could go away and get 100 data points, and 100 different charts, and then we could start methodically asking it questions about doing that. And the AI could come out with different levels of predictions. And it comes out, when you take it to its conclusion, when you take it to its nth, it comes out at the far end, and you're like, how did you arrive there? I can't possibly comprehend how it arrives there, because it's a language model, right? And it doesn't really have, it doesn't really have the ability to think. All it does is it knows that the word that it's writing now, it knows the next word to come out of it, and knows the next word, and it knows the next word because you've given it context before with the prompt. So it hasn't really have the ability to think, and it doesn't really have logic, but it uses words to come up with thoughts and logic, which is 99% better than anything that any human can come up with. There's only 1% of people on planet Earth that could write better than ChatGPT. And once you start looking at how you can use this thing to extrapolate different models, you can pretty quickly see how it'll revolutionize the future, man. And that knowledge that you have, we could import into a model and then create like a fundamental analysis model using macroeconomics. And you show somebody, here's the 50 variables that we've input into it. Now ask it a question. You ask it a question, and it runs it through all of those filters to be spat out the other side. I'm certain that already exists, man. People are already doing that.
Oh, sure. Yeah, and I want to address that. So I want to acknowledge Crypto Anonymous out there, who made a couple of comments, and he made a point how gold back in the 90s was $400. Yeah, I wanted to emphasize in my report, I wasn't saying that gold is the price of gold in dollar terms is cheap. I
wish I could rewind the clock and go back to the 90s and buy it for $400
Well, look, when I was born, the spot price of gold was $30 an ounce. So
was that like in 1928 or?
So it wasn't about the dollar value. It's about, you got to think things a little bit differently about that. That was my point. Is I knew the normal reaction would be, Ed, it's $2,000 an ounce. What do you mean it's cheap? But there's another way to look at it in terms of its relationship. It's a ratio with the S&P 500. So there's cheap, and then there's cheap. There are different versions of that word. So I just wanted, because I kind of wanted to address this issue of a lot of people out there thinking that gold is too expensive. Now I missed it. I missed the opportunity.
You haven't.
Yeah, you haven't. There's so that's kind of, but regarding AI, my advice these days is, because I used to be a trading instructor, after being a trader myself for many years. So I love trading, and I love teaching people how to trade. However, my standard response today, whenever someone asks me about how to learn how to start trading, I ask them why bother? Because there are programs out there right now. One of them that I'm in, that I'm in, is a trading program that involves artificial intelligence. This is the ultimate evolution of trading. And I think the world of trading is never going to be the same. And there are plenty of companies out there who will trade for you, and they open a PAM account and they'll trade for you. And so a lot of them do a good job, and then they split the profits. But the firm that I use, they have overlaid artificial intelligence, and like you said, they collect all sorts of data points, and it is based primarily on technical analysis. And they've spent years working on this. So they are a true artificial intelligence trading platform. They're the only one that I know of. So on that topic, if any of you guys see an advertisement for a company that say they incorporate artificial intelligence, usually they're referring to some kind of a bot that they have. That's not artificial intelligence.
That's quite different, right? The trading bot, the trading algorithm, that's very different to what you're describing. Yeah. I wanted to pull on the thread there, just in your report there. You talked about refinancing, and right to at the very end there, they're coming to the end of that. They're going to have to refinance. And if interest rates even were exactly where they are today, or even if they went back to going down a little bit and they were lower than what they are today, the amount that they have to pay back is almost double. So that's how the Fed have painted themselves into the corner, where there's just no other choice but to continue to print more money. So as they're printing more money, that's creating more inflation. But then the problem is with that inflation, it's having a negative effect elsewhere in the economy. as well, the buying power and all of those things that are intimately connected there as well. So, it said if that the debt ceiling was raised by $4.2 trillion just the last week, whatever it is. But as we approach the 2030s, as we're going that way, once the debt gets up around $38 trillion, and where is it today? You're nudging 22 or whatever it is, a little bit more than that, I think. I can't remember.
No, 32 and a half.
Yeah, sorry. So once it's nudging 38 and it gets above 38, half of the GDP that comes in from the government's got to go back to paying the interest.
Yep.
So you almost can't pay for the debt anymore.
It will.
The only thing you can do to pay for the debt more is to print more money.
Yep. Yeah. If they stay on this slope, it's estimated that more than half of our tax receipts is going to go just towards servicing the debt. It will be the largest line item in the budget. Right now, I think it's number 3 behind defense and healthcare or something like that. But it'll quickly become number 1 and then exceed it. And it's estimated that by 2050, it's going to be at 108% of our GDP. Just on the interest payments, not paying down the principal, just to maintain the interest. That's why this is unsustainable. Something is going to happen along the way. And that's why I think we are. I think it's kind of unavoidable. At some point, I think we are heading the way of Venezuela. I think it's going to happen.
I mean, that's a really good forecast there. I really love how you put those reports together. I want to close out this little segment of the show. I've coined a new acronym, ladies and gentlemen. I'm calling it. I called it yesterday when the aliens arrive. It's going to be called the emergence. They're emerging from their spaceships. I'm calling the New World Order. I'm calling it after my namesake, yeah? Everybody knows that my surname is Brus, B-R-U-S. So it's now Brazil, Russia, Ukraine, South Africa, India, and China. I'm calling it BRICS.
Brusic.
Brusics.
Brusic. Yeah.
It's not like BRICS anymore. It's Brusics because Ukraine is going to be in there after the American economy is destroyed.
I love that. And I guarantee you we are the only show. I haven't heard anyone else making that prediction about Ukraine showing up at the BRICS table to sign a BRICS agreement.
It almost has like a Ukrainian feel to it, My dad was Ukrainian, so it almost has that feel.
We have the connection. Okay. I think that is the way this war is going to end. It's going to end up with the
Belt and Road in there.
With Zelensky sitting at a big oak table with Putin a half mile away down the road, down the table. He'd be signing the agreement, and Zelensky might even be wearing "I love Russia" T-shirt or something.
Erdogan will be there somewhere as well, no doubt.
Yeah. It'll be a big deal, because of course everyone at the Pentagon's heads are going to be exploding, and.
They're exploding right now. The CIA is like getting their dossier together on us to lock us up. You can't say it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's take a little break. We want to remind you that today's show is brought to you by you. In this crazy, uncertain world, we all need a way to protect and insulate ourselves from the outside forces that we simply cannot control. I'm a news junkie, and after a lifetime of constantly immersing myself in the darkness and the despair that engulfs the world, the path to shield myself and my family has become crystal clear. I want to invite you to come and join me in the Unspoken Truth community, where I'll show you how I protect my family from this crazy world. You'll get access to 3 masterclasses worth over $1,000, as well as our live events, training, and community of truthers just like you. Come on over to the unspokentruth.com.au and join us for just 50 cents a day. What are you waiting for? Get started now at the unspokentruth.com.au. All right, I want to catch people up. You would have seen in the news that Trump was indicted, but what does that actually mean, and what's that going to happen? What's that doing to his campaign and whatnot? So you might be wondering, what was he indicted for? So I've got a really super fast report here that explains exactly what they're trying to catch him out on. So let's have a quick look at that.
Our own Lucas Tomlinson keeping tally. He said, according to the unsealed indictment against the former president, of the 102 classified documents seized by the FBI, he said 17 marked top secret, 54 marked secret, and 31 marked confidential. So 17 in that top secret.
So not very many documents there that he's been collared for. So it's just a handful of documents. So I don't know. Did you see Mark Levine yesterday on Fox going off? He went nuclear on that.
No, but I can imagine.
Yeah, he just went crazy on it, right? So the documents were in Mar-a-Lago and they were available to whoever wanted them. They were behind a closed door with a padlock on them. They came in and looked and went, yeah, no worries. Can you just put another lock on that door for us, a different one? And they put that on there, and then that was it. So now the Department of Justice, what do I care about this as an Aussie? Well, you guys are setting the precedent for that here. And if that can happen there in the United States, that can happen here as well. The people in Australia are watching. The people in the opposition party of politics are watching. All around the world, oppositions are watching. And they're saying, okay, we're going to create a precedent here. And the precedent is that we're going to get rid of our political opponents and the people that potentially could beat us by creating some trumped up charges and weaponize the Department of Justice against our opponents. And there's other people that have done that in history as well.
Sure.
Stalin did that. Hitler did that. Mao did that. They all the political opposition that is out there, they came out and got rid of them completely. When Hitler came to power, he outlawed the opposition. There's no more opposition. There's just us.
Like Zelensky.
Zelensky did exactly the same thing, and he did it under the guise of, we're at war. We're not having any political discourse here. There is no more elections. There's no elections when this is going on. Traditionally, when there's been a war in the United States, you have a second-term president. We've seen that before. They stay for 2 terms because we don't want to change. There's no changing of the guard during that. And Zelensky's done the same thing, but the difference is that he's legislated it. He put it in, we're not changing. So I'm staying here permanently while this is going on, and it might go on for 10 years. So he stays there for 10 years. What's the difference between him and Putin? Really? Or Xi. What's the difference when you're doing that, right? So, I'm not saying that they're the same people, but they're doing the same things, right? So when I look at this, I think, man, that's just crazy. So Trump came out on Truth Social and just said, look, I'm innocent. I haven't done anything wrong. I've complied with everything that everybody has said. There's no point in me pulling the 4-minute Trump video out of Truth Social and putting it here for you because you know what he's going to say, right? He says that Russia was a hoax. This was a hoax. They're trying to get rid of me here. It was all a hoax. It was all fake. I haven't done anything wrong. They wanted to see the documents. I showed them the documents. There they are. And now they're trying to create some sort of charges related to something that has never existed before in history. Meanwhile, Joe Biden has done exactly the same thing, only worse. And it really doesn't make any sense. And it kind of, we all knew that in America there, the DOJ is like a really corrupt organization. We know that, we've heard that, we've seen, Russia, or blah, blah, we've heard the same story over and over again. It's like flogging a dead horse, right? But you can see it plain as day. They go away and indict Trump like that, but then Joe Biden is just over there taunting. He's taunting the media. So let me show you how Joe Biden has been taunting the media in relation to the corruption charges he's facing. And you juxtapose that against the way Donald Trump has been behaving, saying, comes out on Truth Social, says to everybody, hey, I'm innocent. I didn't do any of that. Look at Joe Biden and his smug, smart-ass response to the reporters here.
Congresswoman Nancy Mace says there's damning evidence in the FBI file that you sold out the country. Do you have a response to the congressional Republicans?
Where's the money? I'm joking.
Mr. President,
it's a bunch of malarkey.
Mr. President, what do you...
So where's the money? It's a bunch of malarkey. Where's the money? Well, we know where the money is. We know that you were paid $5 million. We know that Hunter was paid $5 million. We've got the whistleblower documents. All we need to do now is go through the bank records and figure that out. And they said it's going to take up to 10 years to go through the bank records to solve all of that. But in 6 months, they've figured out a large percentage of it. Now it's just a matter of time before they figure it out. But to your point yesterday, Ed, I was talking to my brother about this, saying, they've got him. There's the smoking gun. We've got him. It's going to happen. Yeah. And then I said to my brother, I said to my mate Ed, what are they going to do? And he said, nothing. My brother goes, you're living in a fantasy world, Rob. You're just living in a dream world, mate. And I'm like, why? Why? How do they keep getting away with this? And then he's just so smug, saying, well, where's the money then? Like, what? He didn't even deny it.
See?
He's like he's taunting the media to go, all right, well, if you think that's true, go find it. You know, if he really didn't do it, he would do what Donald Trump did. He'd come out and go, "What are you talking about? I'm completely innocent. I never did any of that. They're coming after me again. They've been coming after me for 7 years." But he didn't do that. He takes the opposite approach. And it shows me what a weak, ineffective leader he actually is.
Well, it showed me how entrenched he is in a corrupt system. Yeah, no, he's extremely confident that nothing's going to happen to him. He considers himself bulletproof. And as long as the deep state is in charge, he is. He is a part of a protected class, just like the Clintons. The laws these people broke, the Clintons broke, were severe and they were obvious and they were provable. But they knew nothing was ever going to happen. Same thing with Obama. So once you're a part of the protected class, you can get away with literally murder. Bill Clinton, but you can get away with anything you want to do because you are part of a protected class. So yeah, this is and Trump is the exact opposite. This is another one of my predictions that has come true. I told Rob a few times that as we get on, especially with Trump, this next election is going to be so freaking dirty. The deep state is going to throw everything at every Republican challenger, primarily Trump, because they view him as an existential threat to them. Okay, Trump is not a traditional politician. Okay, so he doesn't care so much about being diplomatic. He's very careful about doing the right thing, making sure all of his T's are dotted because he has to, because he knows they're going to come after him. And you're right.
What about when Trump came to power, and not flogging a dead horse that everybody's heard before, but he just left Hillary Clinton alone. Through the election campaign, he was adamant, you should be in jail. You should be locked up. You've committed crimes. And I think I saw a report somewhere where they said, once you've come to power, don't hold it against them. Just let it go. You won and that's it. And that's pretty much what he did. But we're seeing the other side of politics doing the actual opposite.
Well, in the old days, that's the case, right? No matter how ugly the contest was getting into office, as soon as someone was elected, the other party would give them a courtesy call, saying congratulations and
you won fair and square.
You won fair and square, and then they get on with their life, and then they go on other things. It was kind of a gentlemanly thing to do in American politics. But on the left, for the past three, they carry a grudge, man. They don't forget. And
so do you think if Trump wins again, he'll do the same thing? That's where I was going with all of that.
Oh, well, no. I think part of the reason why I didn't go after it was because he was so busy. They went on day one. They went after him over this Russia collusion thing, right? So he was between that and trying to get his agenda done, he had no time to waste on that stuff. Besides, on top of which, he knew that they were a protected class. He had people tell you there's no point in going after her because the attorney general isn't going to do anything about it. So it's a pointless. Now the single biggest accomplishment that Trump had, and he had many, the single biggest accomplishment was he prevented Hillary from being president. So so that right away, that for me, that's the biggest part of his legacy. Because can you imagine what this world would look like if Hillary had been in office? Holy cow. So that was the single biggest achievement in being president. But listen, the deep state, it almost doesn't matter who the president is because the deep state runs the show. Joe Biden is an empty suit. Joe Biden isn't even worth talking about. He is not making any of these decisions. Okay? The people behind him.
I love getting your views on it, man, because I see mainstream media here in Australia, and I see American politics is so divisive. Here in Australia, we're divisive, but we're divisive about completely different things. And in my view, some of the if you put the stupid voice thing aside, the divisiveness that we face in Australia is about how to distribute the wealth that we actually have, and our politicians are arguing about how to best get the best bang for buck in what it is that we're doing on this project or that project. So, that's a very heated argument as well. That it's uncomfortable and unpleasant. But, at the end of the day, both parties are two sides of the same coin. They want what's best for Australia, and they're trying to figure out how to actually get that done. If I take a really optimistic view, if I take all my pessimism away and, okay, like if I look at these people and what they're really saying and what they're trying to do, the people that are in charge are trying to do the right thing. And they're not corrupted the same way. We don't suffer from the same cronyism that you suffer from there in the United States.
Well,
so
good for you. I wish you best on that. I hope it stays that way. I think it's unavoidable, though. I think eventually they will be corrupted, because I think it's just the temptation is too great. The politicians in America, they don't give a flying squirrel about what's best for America.
See, in Australia, I think it's a little bit different. I think if you got the opportunity to sit down with the minister for whatever, that person would be genuine, and they would genuinely be trying as hard as humanly possible to solve the challenges that they've got. The arguments that they're having with the shadow minister, their opposite number, are about how to distribute the wealth properly. And one person will be saying, "This is how I'm going to do it," the person in charge, and the person that could be in charge would say, "Don't do that. That's a waste of money. Here's how you should really do it." Australia's a great nation because of those things.
Sure,
but
that's a legitimate argument to have.
It is. That's perfect.
That's what arguments in government should be about. But not in our country. It's about anything but those kind of issues. Now it's about, well, should we give $5 billion to that lesbian dance theory center in New York City, or should we send it to the troops so that they can get off food stamps?
We don't seem to have divisive conversation. Like the minister for whatever is not having that same thing, that conversation with their shadow minister like that. It's not divisive like that here in Australia. Some subjects are, but if you take the heat out of the conversation and stand back objectively, use your critical thinking like we talk about all the time, which just means taking your emotions out of the argument, and you lay those arguments out, the things that are divisive here in Australia are small. There's probably, take the voice out of it, because that's kind of an anomaly, but it's small. There's maybe like 3 to 5% of things that are quite divisive. The rest of it, we can all agree to disagree that everyone's working towards the same end goal, which is a better version of what we got now.
Well, in America, the left's arguments, they never have arguments. Everything is ad hominem attacks. They can't win an argument. So they go straight to ad hominem attacks. Oh, you're a racist.
It's strange, isn't it? Yeah, that doesn't really happen here in Australia, and I'm really thankful for that. That's why I watch American politics closely. People always say to me, "What do you care about American politics for, Rob? What do you talk about that for? You live in Australia, and you live in the luckiest country in the world." And it's like, no, because that's a model for what it could be. I follow European politics as well. I often watch what the British are doing, because that's a model here for Australia as well. And there's huge division there. What I see in British politics is that sometimes I see the conversation is more advanced. In the UK, for instance, they have massive energy crisis, and they've gone back to nuclear energy. And they're building all these nuclear plants, and they're trying to become self-reliant, and they're trying to get off gas, they're trying to get off coal, and nuclear is the best way to do it. I saw some footage yesterday of the buildings where they're building these facilities. Just unbelievable. The engineering and what happens, and the scale of these projects is just enormous. So imagine how many jobs that creates, and how many jobs that creates over a 20 or a 30-year period, because it takes 10 or 15 years to build these power plants. And then once they're operational, those people don't just go away. We're still building. It's just unbelievable. But here in Australia, that conversation has been stifled because there's legislation that outlaws and bans nuclear power. You're not allowed to have that. Now the conversation is shifting a little bit to say, hey, maybe we should do this. We agree that coal is not good for the environment, and gas is transitionary, but we also know that renewables are not going to work. So maybe we should open the conversation here. And the biggest mining company here in Australia came out and said, yep, let's open the conversation. Let's talk about it. Rio Tinto came out and said that.
Okay. Well, God bless you in Australia. But
fingers crossed.
Okay, yeah.
I live in hope.
But look, as far as Britain is concerned, as far as the degradation of politics, there's only one country in the world that rivals America in cheap shots toward each other.
Yeah, that's nasty, isn't it? It's wrestling with crocodiles or something over there.
Yeah, they are nasty, man. And talk about it's all woke stuff there in the left. Their version of the left, man. They give lessons to our woke people over here about how to be disgusting and nasty. And as far as having, reasonable debates over their energy, there is no reasonable debate on their energy policy over there. King Charles, now the King Charles, he's the guy actually credited with the term the Great Reset. Okay, and he has set the tone for a long time. He's leading the charge toward this economic bullshit and this equity bullshit, this ESG bullshit. There's a big push, just like in Ireland, which is part of the UK, right? They're killing off the cows. They can't kill them off fast enough because they're farting all the time. In England now, they want to, just like in the Netherlands, they're confiscating all the farmland. Well, in England too, they're trying to what's it called? They're trying to turn all the farmland into natural farmland, right? Like natural prairie.
Like
grass.
in Sri Lanka.
Yeah, right. In Sri Lanka, right? No more chemicals, none of that. So
and that's what. Let me just interject there. That's why I'm watching these things and commentating on them, right? Because that's a model for what will happen. Is that happening here in Australia? Yeah, in Australia, they talked about farmers have to get rid of nitrogen and they have to do all these things, which means their output has to go away. So the same thing that's happening in Holland is happening here in Australia as it relates to that. And when I look at, if I take away all of the wokeness and all of the awfulness of politics there in the UK and I look at their energy conversation, they tried to do everything we're doing here in Australia. If I look at German politics, I see exactly the same thing. They tried to do everything that they're doing here in Australia by going green and by going renewable and shutting down our baseload power supply, and it blew up in their face. It blew up in the Germans' face. It blew up in the British face. It did, yeah, because they turn off the coal, there's no power. Their renewables don't work.
Did it?
Yeah, I think it did.
No, it didn't.
But their renewable sector doesn't carry them the way that they wanted it to.
See, this is the problem with you, Rob. You're an idealist, man. I
believe in the good of people, man. I want people to be good.
There you go. You believe these politicians, they might be misguided, but they really are looking out for the benefit of the country, the benefit of the people. No, they don't. They don't care about climate change. They don't care about your health care. It's about freaking control. It's about this ESG. They've got an agenda. They've got a liberal agenda. And
that's what I'm saying.
Everything else be damned. So they're not chasing these energy policies because they think it's going to be the best policy for their people. They think.
Well, they gave it a go and it didn't work, is what I'm saying. And like in Germany, that green policy didn't work.
I'm saying it did work. Listen, they have pretty much.
Oh, because of control, you mean?
That's right. They pretty much destroyed the industrial base in Europe, right? Over this natural gas stuff. You can't use more than X% of natural gas. So they had one allocation for residential properties, one allocation for factories. Well, it put these factories out of business. They have effectively, cut the GDP of the entire EU by almost half because of these policies.
So the policy here in Australia is the reverse of that, right? That idiot Chris Bowen says that cheap renewables are the cheapest and fastest way to bring back manufacturing to Australia to lower the cost of everything.
Well, that's the story they pitch, but it's not true.
I know, and that's what I'm saying. Because in practice, in the UK it didn't work, in Germany it didn't work, in the Netherlands it's not working, in California it doesn't work, and that's why people need to pay attention to these things, because you get a glimpse into the future. It's a little bit like you reading the charts, right? All you need to do is to look somewhere else in the world where they've tried what they're trying here in Australia, and you'll see, has it worked or has it failed? But the vast majority of this green stuff has failed. All of it's failed, really.
Look, they've been trying this green stuff since the 70s. Yeah. So this idea that solar doesn't work, that wind doesn't work, is not new to anybody. So these people who were pushing this green energy, they knew it didn't work. But they're pushing it anyway because their intention, look, they want wealth redistribution. They want to take the wealthy countries and take them down a peg. One of the ways you take them down a peg is by reducing their economic output. How do you do that? You institute these policies that they knew was going to have this effect. So as far as they're concerned, they see it as a victory. You and I look at it as a disgraceful, show of power and arrogance and failure. That's not the way they look at it. They see it as a success. Joe Biden.
I got one for you that highlights that. Actually, just as you're saying that, I'm thinking of that. So I heard a statistic from somebody in the energy industry here in Australia just a couple of days ago, and he was saying, and I just got to be careful that I'm not parroting deep state and parroting the mainstream narrative that what people want you to hear, right? But the government has come out and said that we're going to build wind and solar, and that's going to form a percentage of the grid, and we're going to go to renewables, we're switching to this, we're switching to that. And in order to do that, we need 10,000 kilometres of new transmission lines at minimum. So someone in the power industry had come out and said, look, you're living in a dream world. You want all of this to happen by 2030, right? And so he goes, put aside the fact that none of what they're trying to do will work. Just put that aside for a second. Give them the benefit of the doubt and say it does work. So these are the conversations that we have, right? Okay, cool. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt and say that it does work because there's really smart people doing sophisticated modeling, blah, blah, blah. He comes out and goes, they want 10,000 kilometres of power lines, of transmission lines, and big towers, 20 metres tall, blah, blah. You've got to reclaim the land. You've got to negotiate deals. You've got to do that. He said, assume, I'm giving you the benefit of doubt on everything. Assume that you can do that. Assume that you can reclaim the land. The council allows you to do that. The landowners allow you to do that. Everything goes the way that you want it to go. The reality is, any infrastructure like that, they can only build about, and then we know this from history, only about 500 kilometres per year of transmission lines. Doesn't matter where it is. So in its totality, the resources are available only allow 500 kilometres per year. But the government sets these targets, and the government sets the target for 2030, which is 7 years away. Yeah, 7 years away. Really, it's 6.5 years away because we're in June now as we're talking. So 6.5 years away times 500. So that gets you just over 3,000 kilometres of power lines. So you set an ambitious target of 2030, but someone in the industry that knows what they're talking about, that builds this infrastructure, says that in order to hit that target, we need at least 20 years. And I can't just go and hire more labourers and more concreters and more people to build power lines and transmission lines. It's not about that. It's about getting everything in order. I've got to go to a council meeting. I've got to get that landowner. That landowner is fighting. He's taking me to court. That council doesn't want it. All of these things going on. 500 kilometres is the maximum you're going to get out of it. And now you want 10,000 kilometres. That's a 20-year project, but you're only giving them 7 years to do it. If you told me it was a 7-year project, I would say that it's probably going to take the government twice that, 10 to 15 years to actually get it done. So now we're talking about a 20-year project. And by the time you're finished, it's going to be 40 years because you're just incompetent. But then in 40 years' time, all of the solar panels that you've put in are destroyed and gone because they've gone the way of the dinosaurs. And then all of the wind turbines are dead as well because they only last 20 years. By the time you build the transmission lines, all of the solar farms and the wind farms that you've actually built in the meantime are now obsolete. So now we have to go and do the whole cycle again. But then, first of all, you have to recycle all of the equipment that you've got there. What are you going to do? Just leave it in place? So there's a fella out there, he's the ombudsman, I have to find the exact detail, the ombudsman for something, and he handles the complaints about green energy, about wind and solar. So if you've got a complaint about something, you go to this guy and he's got all the legislation and all the powers to actually solve these problems. And one of the questions that was asked at this Senate estimates hearing was by Malcolm Robertson. He says to this guy, so do you have like these developers that come in and I want to build this solar farm, right? I want to build it. And they go through the council application, they tick all the boxes, they do all that sort of stuff. Do you have a bond? Like if I was going to come and rent a property, so just a residential property, in order to do that, I've got to give you 4 weeks of rent up front. You hold on to that because when I leave, I've got 4 weeks worth of rent to fix any damages you've got. No damages, there's your bond back, see you later. And he asked the question, are you making sure that these developments have a bond over the solar farms and the wind farms that they create? And he said, yeah, a prudent developer and a prudent landholder would have that, but not everybody has that. And nobody really picked up on what he said. And I listened very closely to what he said a couple of times. I pulled the video back. Essentially what he's saying is that I can build a giant solar farm. So think of the scale of these things, right? You picture that in your mind. So they're massive, right? The landowner has it. The solar farm produces energy for 20 years and the solar panels start to die. if that company has got its return on its investment over, say, 12 years, and they've been profitable for 7 years, if they no longer want to be there anymore, we can just go, ta-ta, see you later, bye. They just leave everything there because there's no bond. And the bond that the landowner takes is to pull those panels out to put the land back to what it was. Whenever there's a mining project here in Australia, there's a bond payable by the mining company. It means you want to dig a great big hole and pull all that stuff out of the ground. When you're finished digging that hole in 20 years' time, you've got to put the environment back to actually what it was. And you've got to make it better than what it was. And the mining companies are really good at doing that, right? They take a long time to do that. It takes them 4 or 5 years to do that. But in these green energy projects, it turns out here in Australia that not all of those projects have a bond available to them. So if the wind turbine only lasts 20 years, or the solar farm only lasts 20 years, and it's going to take 20 years to build these power lines and these transmission lines to actually get it all done, what happens if the owner of those farms suddenly doesn't want to be in that business anymore? All of that shit's just going to be sitting there in those remote parts of Australia, rotting in the sun for the next 500 years.
You know, as I'm sitting here listening to you, Rob, making all of your very well thought out points and very good points, it has become more and more clear to me that you are a white supremacist.
That's going to get the power grid switched off, pal. Don't say that.
Okay,
and the internet
racist.
with it.
You're racist.
Bloody racist. Telling me that we can't have that. I must be racist because I'm speaking arguments.
That's right.
That's how I shut you down.
That's right. That's the way it would go in any kind of a committee meeting where the government is trying to dig past the proposal and dig down before he gets too far. Oh, you're a racist, man.
Yeah, before his argument comes all the way out and people go, yeah, shit, that's a really interesting thing, that 500 kilometers a year and you've got 10,000 kilometers, that's 20 years. I can do the math quickly. Like,
racist?
What? You're a white supremacist. No, I'm not. I'm not wearing a white sheet over my head or it.
Transphobe? Yeah. You know.
All right. Let's shift gears. I want to ask you a question, Ed. Maybe in this next report, maybe this is the most damning thing that President Biden ever did when he was the vice president. I want you to take note of how actually coherent he is. And once upon a time, he was a pretty squared away dude. But here's the thing that we might have forgotten about. But here's a little reminder.
Over convincing our team or others to convincing us that we should be providing for loan guarantees. And I went over for, I guess, the 12th, 13th time to Kyiv, and I was supposed to announce that there was another $1 billion loan guarantee. And I had gotten a commitment from Poroshenko and from Yatsenyuk that they would take action against the state prosecutor, and they didn't. So they said they were walking out to press conference. I said, no, I said, I'm not going to.
They were going to take action against the state prosecutor, and they didn't. And so this is where he's got caught out. And so this is where Hunter Biden comes into it in the back end, where they're saying, my old man's going to give $1 billion to your country, and the process is that you need to go away and get rid of these people. And the big guy here got paid $5 million for that, and so did his son in the process. So let's just back up and just continue to what he says and how he actually does it. A lot of people haven't seen this video.
So they said they were walking out to press conference. I said, no, I said, I'm not going to, we're not going to give you the $1 billion. They said, you have no authority. You're not the president. The president said. I said, call him. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting the $1 billion. I said, you're not getting the $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, 6 hours? I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Well, son of a bitch. Got fired. And they put in place someone who was solid at the time.
You got to wonder, eh? Like,
Okay.
Is that the most damning thing that he ever said?
Well, of course it is. But this illustrates two things to me. The first one is he loves to paint himself as the big guy. You know, he loves the attention. He loves the boost to his ego, that he has this kind of an influence. This is what I can get done, and he can't resist the opportunity of telling everyone in the room how big a guy he is. So his ego, he's stroking his ego. That's number one. And number two, he doesn't see anything wrong with what he did. For him, so his moral compass is so polluted, so distorted that he doesn't see anything wrong with that kind of extortion. And then
it's all perspective, right?
Well,
and it's what you're saying. Like to us, it looks and sounds like extortion. I can see Paulie in the comments there says that Biden was the governor of Ukraine for years under Obama, and that is actually highlighted by the fact that he said he went back and forth there, so many times. And you're just 100% right. You and I look at it and go, aren't you like leveraging these people? Get rid of this guy and I'm going to give you $1 billion. And like, we're like, is that really how politics works and all that horse trading bullshit? And we think that is really like grimy and like grubby. And you're like, man, that's awful. But to him, to your point, he thinks he's the shit.
Yeah.
He's like, look at me, man, son of a bitch, I sorted it out,
That's right. Son of a bitch. Yeah.
That's very strange.
So, his view, he is in that Clinton ilk and the Obama ilk. Where that kind of thing, Obama, in the middle of the night sends how many billions of dollars in cash on the tarmac in Iran, executive order. Hey, just send them a few $1 billion and
give them their money back, take it out of our vault.
These people's idea, look, the Constitution be damned. The liberals and the leftists, they have no use for the Constitution. It gets in the way.
It does. It does indeed.
They got things they have to get done, right? they got cocktail parties to go to. They got stories to tell. They got people to put in power, and they've got these corrupt organizations, these NGOs that they get billions of dollars in kickbacks from that they need to get funded. Bill's got to take that next flight, to Epstein's Island. They got things to do. They've got an agenda, and little things like the law and propriety have no use to these people. And
I just want you to take note of where he's sitting as well as you're saying that. Let me just pause that. You can see Council on Foreign Relations. Yeah. And ladies and gentlemen, on your weekend, I want you to go and Google Council on Foreign Relations so you can see exactly what that is. If you want to see who really is running the world, who's really pulling the political strings, that is actually who it is. You think it's the WEF or the deep state or something like that. This is actually who is running it all. And it's well known. It's well known. It's in plain sight that that's actually there as well. So it's kind of ironic that he's sitting there at the CFR talking about those particular things and boasting about them as well. Now, that video wasn't very long ago. I got a video for you from just a couple of days ago, and I want to show you we all know that Joe Biden is in decline, and you said at the top of the show there, Ed, I think really well, that his wife, Jill, is the one pushing him forward there doing that. And I want you to see the difference between her and him in this video. And this video is actually a little bit sad. I feel for the guy, and he's just, watch how confused he is.
And if it does not work, this is a great opportunity to show you how our students have to troubleshoot things.
So it's actually pretty sad. If you watch the guy on the left here, you watch Jill in the middle and the fella on the right, that they both listening carefully to what this person is saying. And then if I play it without the sound, it's even worse. They're all laughing, and he's like, "What are they laughing at? Like, what are you talking about?" Like, he's genuinely confused, and that's kind of not funny. But they just keep putting the sock puppet out there as the front man. Like, it's cruel, man. It's really
it's elder abuse. Listen, Joe Biden is a despicable person. She's got to be like the worst wife in the world. It's all about her, and she's really enjoying the limelight. She's really enjoying the powers that she has, behind the scenes. She's the body man, right? She's the one that keeps him. Shows him around the stage where to go, and I'm sure I can just imagine him in the Oval Office, and there's an event he has to go to. He doesn't want to go, and Jill they're saying, "Come on, let's go."
Let's go.
Let's go.
Yeah, it's really unpleasant, hey, when you think about it like that, what they're actually doing to somebody. And yeah, man, I thought that video sort of summed it up nicely about how he's actually been abused and what they're doing to him.
Yeah. Well, Joe Biden, he's an empty suit. He always has been an empty suit. Ever since even before he ran for president. he is a useless. I mean, useless. He's a useful idiot through this whole process. Okay. When people talk about the president of the United States made their decision, he hasn't made one decision since he's been president. Not one. His handlers give him a cue card and tell him, they tell him what decisions he's made that day.
In advance, there it is.
In advance. Oh, by the way, these are decisions you made as president today. So just so you know.
What do you mean? It's like 7 o'clock in the morning. How can I have made you've made them? It's all right. Don't worry. That's just how it is.
It's the easiest job in the world. He doesn't have to make any decisions. Other people make it for him. Which look, the only reason why this guy got elected is because of tribalism.
Yeah, there it is.
Our country is so divided. They didn't elect him because he was the best man for the job.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, there's a bit of unspoken truth right there. Thank you so much for joining us here on the show today. Don't forget we're available as a podcast, and you can follow us over on Telegram as well. And all of the links to all of that are right down in the show notes. Before we go, Ed, I want to say thank you for another week, and I want to get your reaction on a couple of pictures that I put here in front of you because I think it's a fun way to close out the week. I came across this. I kind of, a little spoiler alert, I shared this with you yesterday, but I'd love to get your reaction on that. That was about the dam. I thought that was such a funny picture. What's your thought on Colin Powell there?
Brilliant. Rest in peace. We all know that he's famous for the vile incident at the UN.
Everything's based on a lie, huh? It's crazy. And I think that's the whole metaphor that they're trying to put in there. The whole thing's based on a lie. My favorite part of that picture are the two little UFOs across the top of the dam. What do you reckon? Did you see that? You probably didn't notice that.
I just noticed that just now.
Everything in life is a distraction, man. The mainstream media. Brilliant. All right, last one to close out the week. I was at my missus is a photographer, right? Mm-hmm. She was at a party a couple of weeks ago, and she photographed all of your mates there, man, and they were there.
Is that Klaus?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
He looks like he lost some weight. I don't know what.
I came across that photo and I immediately right-click Save As, and I thought that's going to be fun to show Ed. I thought of you when I saw that, and I thought, what?
Can you imagine going on vacation and staying in a resort and accidentally walking into that?
Well, as I right-click and save as, I think, what do I save this file name as? And the only thing that I could think of was the word fucktards, because that's what those people are. They're a bunch of fucking morons, mate.
Well, I think you got to find some way to get the limbo in there somewhere. You got to find something to involve the limbo.
I should have played some Caribbean music or some shit like that.
Post-limbo celebration or something.
All right, let's get out of here. See you next week, Ed. Bye for now, mate.
See you, buddy.